Okay. We'll call this September the 8th council meeting to order. And I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded lands of the Mi'kmaq. And let's stand for the singing of O Canada.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all our sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land, glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Okay, record of attendance. Good. Absent with regrets is nothing. Conflicts of interest, you can declare it the agenda item. Go ahead, Councillor.
Yes, Your Worship. I'll be declaring a conflict on agenda item 9A and 10A. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Approval of agenda. I have two additions. 14A, I'll put the ferry issue. And 14B, I'll put Her Majesty's passing. Anyone else? Do we have any additions? Go ahead there, Deputy.
Can we add Pink Day?
Yes. That's why you're wearing that shirt. Anyone else for any additions? Deletions? Good. Okay. Motion to approve the agenda with the change. Councillor Hatfield and Councillor Lesser. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay. Approval of minutes. Town Council, August the 11th, please. Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Hatfield. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Committee of the Whole, August 18th.
So moved.
Councillor Cleveland, second by Deputy Mayor. Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Okay, so we have a public hearing next on accessory building. We'll start with 9A. Okay, certainly. Let's make note in the minutes that Councillor Dares excused himself for this one. So 9A, and what will happen here with each of these two agenda items is I'll ask 3 times if anyone in the audience wishes to speak to the item. And if you wish to speak, just come right up to the microphone here, tell us your name and where you live, and you can share whatever with council. And just a reminder that council doesn't make the decision right at this moment, but we do discuss it later in the agenda. I think it's actually the next items up. Okay? All right, so this one is 9A, accessory buildings in the front yard of residential zones. And it's to amend the land use bylaw to allow accessory buildings in the front yard of residential zones under specific circumstances outlined in the recommended amendments. Would anyone like to speak to this? Yep. Welcome.
Is this on? Oh, yeah, it sounds like
is.
it's on. So I submitted the request for this to be reviewed, and I came before the committee of the whole, but I thought I would show up tonight to the full council meeting if there's any questions for me. But I really appreciate the support of town staff and the development and planning officers in helping me understand the way through this process. So just a thank you to them.
Okay, thank you. So this is Matthew Dares.
Yeah, sorry, Matthew Dares, 26 Kai Crescent.
Yeah, and he came to the planning advisory. So some people were at planning advisory and some weren't. So the next step is if there's any questions for Mr. Dares, he said he's here to answer any questions, concerns, anything like that. And then if not, we'll move on. Okay, Chris.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Would anyone else like to speak to this? And I'll ask a third time. Would anyone else like to speak to this one? Okay. So hearing no one, this will be later in the agenda. And then 9B under the public hearing is a rezoning 1 Cosman Lane, and that is to rezone 1 Cosman Lane from low-density residential to medium-density residential. Is anybody here that would like to speak to this? And I would also say that if the administration had received emails or anything like that, they would be we would have those here in front of us to read as concerns. Okay. I'll ask a second time. Would anyone like to speak to this one? I'll ask one more time. Would anyone in the audience like to speak to this one? Okay, hearing no one, we'll go to the business arising. So we're right back at what we just discussed. Yeah. Excuse me. So 10A, and this is the business, under the business, this is where council discusses these and we make the decision. So so CAO, this is a decision, correct? Like we don't have to go to another round of public hearings.
Your Worship, this is second reading, so this is second and final reading for this item.
I know I ask that every time. Okay, thank you. Okay, so again, that council approves second reading to land use bylaw amendments to allow accessory buildings in the front yard of residential zones under the specific circumstances outlined in the recommended amendments. Okay, and the planner's here as well, in case anybody had any questions. So I need a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Okay, Deputy Mayor. Okay, is there any discussion on this one? Councillor Hatfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. Okay, first, I think I have to apologize that I think I totally missed this at first reading when we looked at this last month. I think we were all kind of in the summer haze and it kind of missed our radar screen. So I would like to speak on this. Over the past several years, the town of Yarmouth has worked very hard to beautify and revitalize our town. Every move and decision we have made has been about doing the right thing to make the town better for tomorrow. To make it a place where people want to visit or come to live. Visitors now come to our town and look around and say, wow, look what Yarmouth is doing, look where they're going. And as a resident and as a councillor of the town of Yarmouth, I take great pride in how we look and where we are going. For me, having sheds on the front yards under any circumstances is not part of that. I feel it contradicts the direction we have worked so hard to go in and where we now are. I find it difficult to say to the public that we are going to spend and have spent thousands of millions of dollars redeveloping and beautifying our downtown and overall town, and then sit here and try to consider having property owners be able to have sheds in the front yard. I feel it's the opposite of the forward and visionary direction we have been aiming towards. The other huge concern for me is when I look at this is what position does it put the people who live directly across the street from these property owners that may now be able to put a shed on their front yard. I would not want any resident of the town of Yarmouth to wake up one morning or one afternoon and look out and see that their neighbor now has a shed on their front yard, which is in direct view of their house, their windows when they look out their window. a shed that this council has allowed to be put there. And that is the reality of what could happen if this is passed. I recognize that the recommended motion does specify that this would be only for specific circumstances as outlined in the amendment. And I did ask staff how many properties in the town that this might meet, how many properties would meet the specific circumstances. And they did say that there would probably be a small number, but they could not identify the number or where these properties would be. So that really concerned me. And so for all these reasons, I would not be supporting this amendment to the land use bylaw.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Okay, well, in the interest of just showing a different aspect, and while I completely and respectfully understand where Councillor Hatfield is coming from, my initial concern when this came up was whether or not this could be done kind of hilly-nilly. And if you read, it is very specific as to how it can be done, the way that it's done, the size, all of it, and is done in a way that reassures me that this is not an exception to a rule so much, but an understanding that sometimes you just don't have room in the back, depending on how your lots are set up. And so because of the specificness of the way that this is all laid out, I will be supporting this particular motion. So that's on my end of it. And thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Okay. So there's two perspectives put forward there. Go ahead, Deputy. Well, go ahead. Somebody's got a light on. Oh, Councillor Bell. Sorry.
Your Worship, when this came up at planning, the question that I had was around the language in point 2 of the bylaw, which talks about lots that are not adequately sized for accessory buildings. And going back again, I just have some concerns about how to interpret that word adequately. I mean, I think different people could interpret it a different way, and I understand where Councillor Hatfield's concerns are coming from, and I am cognizant of very recent bylaw enforcement activities that resulted in individuals who unwittingly were in violation of bylaws having to get rid of what they were in violation of doing. So I do appreciate that we need a balance between rigidity and finding an ability to accommodate, but I am concerned about the objections that have been raised by Councillor Hatfield, and I just wonder if there is anything that we can do to satisfy her concerns short of basically enforcing the bylaw infraction. So the question I have is, would it be possible to do this through a development agreement, which would be extremely specific and would require, would give the planning committee and ultimately council the ability to have more control? Or are there ways of more explicitly defining the criteria so that we can, I mean, I guess what I'm concerned about is we don't know how many properties this is going to impact. That's my concern, not with the application that's before us, but what are the ramifications downstream that we don't appear to have a really good handle on at this moment. So I'm not sure what the path forward is, but I wanted to address those observations and
Okay.
maybe.
So our planner's here, can we?
He is here and he's smiling, so what I would guess is that, and he can certainly correct me on this, but I would guess that we don't have a provision allowing for development agreements for the development of sheds specifically. There are certain things that you can use a development agreement to achieve, but am I off mark on that?
And I just want to say two quick things before Tony. It's sort of an infraction, but I did explain to Mr. Dares when you came to planning advisory, this is never about the individual. It's about going forward. It's never about the one issue. If there were one, it's always about looking forward into the future and what can happen down the road. I think you alluded to that, right? Yeah.
Mr. Dares' situation.
Yeah.
And I did drive up by his property, and the shed looks wonderful. But it's about what doors are we opening, and how do we control that, and how do we ensure that property owners who live across the street, as a property owner, I just don't want to open my curtains one day and see a shed on the front yard across my street, right? I don't think that will happen because it's McDonald's, but, I just want to protect the property owners out there that they're not faced with this and find out that council has allowed this to happen. So it is a big concern.
It's sort of like I don't know if this is what you were talking about, Counselor, because it could be something else, but the garbage receptacles that ended up on the, right? There was one or two, and then there was 100, but anyway. So go ahead. Do you want to speak first, Deputy, and then you okay with that? Okay, go ahead.
I guess to the question of the development agreement, it's certainly something could amend the land use bylaw to enable it by development agreement. I guess my question would be, is something accessory buildings really something we want to be doing by development agreement because of the process involved in doing a development agreement? It's not really the intent of a development agreement. And then I guess just to the point of the adequately sized and the interpretation of that, that would be where then the default would be to the setbacks specified in each zone associated with the side yards and rear yards. So that's how both Joanne and myself would interpret basically in terms of adequately sized. We'd look at the setbacks for each zone to determine whether the side yard or rear yard actually is adequate to enable that accessory building. So.
Is that helpful? You asked, yeah, okay. All right, thank you. Go ahead there, Deputy.
So you brought up the point that I was going to bring up, the garbage things in the front. No,
That's what I always think
it's just one of those things. I mean, this stuff I can honestly say isn't my strong suit, but I definitely read and try to keep up on it and have discussions with, people around. But I think Councillor Heather brought up a good point. It's not case specific. It's about, the general public and I guess the neighbors and whatnot. I also think of Vancouver Street when that monument was out front of the doctor's house there. Like, some people were in agreement with it, some people weren't. They didn't like how it looked, but I think it's our job overall to take care of everybody when we do this, and obviously it isn't case specific. I'm kind of on the fence, of which way I think. I did take a drive by. It does look good. It doesn't stick out, but I think some of the things that Councillor Heather brought up are just, waking up in the morning. I can imagine buying a $500,000 home in a subdivision, looking across the street and seeing a shed in the front yard the next day, and I had no say about it, and thought I was in a neighborhood that might not do this, right? So it is for the greater good and kind of looking out. I don't really know where I sit on it. Also, to Councillor Bell's point, when we talk about other things that could be done, it's just one of those things. In one sense, it's a very easy yes, no problem, because it looks good there. But if 50 of them or 100 of them become an issue, then it's an issue that comes back here. So I really would like the number if we could, even if we don't have it at the moment, maybe put this off, but to know how many houses could be affected through this, at least, yeah, roughly. Just,
Does she have that mapping ability?
I don't know if Tony, if you checked with Tracy on whether or not the accuracy of her building footprints related to property lines and whether that's queryable for this.
I think it would be a very difficult and time-consuming
Yeah.
assessment because the property lines don't necessarily line up with the SAT imagery of where the main building is. So that's why we always kind of default to more site plan specific plan surveys. So I mean, we could make more of a qualitative assessment, just looking at buildings or properties where really the side and rear yards are the smallest of them. But, you know, it'd still be a time-consuming exercise to really do that assessment.
Okay, so so he said time-consuming, but did you want to?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I've heard that comment a couple of times here in the discussion that the number of properties that this bylaw amendment might affect your decision. So if you wish to defer this item a month, staff can put in best efforts, I guess, over the next few weeks to determine the likely number of properties that this amendment could affect, and maybe that will help you feel more comfortable one way or the other with the decision.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Heather?
And I'd also like to know if we can determine that where the other properties around it are located, and so in visual, right? You know, like I just don't want people to open up their windows and be able to see this shed sitting on their front yard that hasn't been there before. And so that's one of my big concerns, is being respectful to those that are around them. And the way that, you know, Mr. Dares has put his is very respectful, and it's kind of hidden, but not everybody might not have the ability to do that. So that's one of my concerns.
Councillor Lesser?
I guess I'm torn on it because I would have thought this was an easy one going forward to approve until I heard some of the comments tonight. I guess from a personal point of view, I don't see an issue with it because I think sometimes we need to bend the rules a bit, and I've been vocal over the years about that. But I wasn't elected for my personal views, and there are some good points that I brought up. I don't know what it would have felt like. This to me in the picture, I didn't drive by, but in the picture it looks nice, and I guess I would, now that you mentioned it, it would be of concern of what that could look like in a different property. Like I said, my personal views would say just let it go, but I know that that's not how town planning works, and that's why I'm not on the planning advisory committee. So I guess I'm torn on it as well.
So I heard, I'm just jotting down what I'm hearing, because there's a lot of great conversation. So I'm hearing how many, basically, and I'm also hearing where are the neighboring properties located in relation to that. So how close? So for example.
So Your Worship, if I
Yeah.
could intervene there. So if we're able to come up with an estimate of the number, obviously it's going to require some eyes on a map, at the images and try and determine from what we know. We can provide the civic numbers. And then,
okay.
it's a very subjective thing to say, how will the neighbor feel about it if a shed lands there? So if we provide you with the civic numbers, then council can, on their own.
Do some work, yeah.
Go and do some investigation, as you have with Mr.
Yeah.
Dare's property.
Okay. Councillor Lesser?
I guess the other thing I'm looking at, and like I said, I didn't drive by to see this, just because I've been in Halifax for a couple weeks. It looks to me like the building next door to it, or the house next door, just looking at the photo, appears to be closer to the road. I don't know if that's just the way it looks. But I guess my question is around around how this gets determined. Is it just based on the front of your house? And then, like, if your house is set back from the road, you can't have anything in front? Or is it, you know, if your property is right on the road, like we have some on Alma Street that are like right on the road, so obviously a shed wouldn't work there, but I don't know if that's...
It's all sides, but you go ahead, Tony, and tell us.
I'm just trying to make sure I understand the question. So how the front yard's determined? Is that?
Yeah, I'm just thinking if you had a property, I don't know, if you took a large chunk of land and you built your house at the back of the property, would there be an opportunity to put a shed in the front? Or is it, like, I guess I'm not up to date on the planning advisory process in this way. Or is it, you just can't have them in front of your house?
Yeah, so the front yard's basically determined basically on the street frontage, like what's considered, you know, the civic. But there are examples, like you said, in Alma and other properties in town where it's really the side yard intuitively might be the front yard, but it again depends on the street frontage. So that's why it's still pretty subjective around the town as to how you determine which is the side yard, front yard, rear yard, and there is sizing that's specified throughout the land use bylaw in terms of each of those yards. I don't know if that answers your question. Okay.
So there's some really, really nice, and they're new. I don't know if it's Huntington or the next one over. But up from Pleasant Street, between Pleasant and Crosby Drive. And they're lovely, and they're new, and I don't know if they're duplexes but I drive by, and they're lovely buildings. And I think we had, like, the garbage thing was an issue there because everybody started putting they were lovely garbage containers, but then everybody started putting out stuff that's not quite up to what Mr. Dares has put up, right? So then you have to have those parameters. But I guess I think, and I don't know this, but I know that those side yards are non-existent, and the backyards are very much non-existent. So then the question is, can they have that shed? I think that's what we're saying, and they probably could, because there's
3 or 4 units, right? So would we
Yeah.
then have 4 sheds
Yeah.
sitting out front, right?
Yeah.
Because they are some tiny, compact houses, I think 2 bedrooms, so those folks might like to have a little shed to
Yeah.
put some stuff in, right? So those are the
those are the
concerns.
issues. Yeah. Does that help, Derek? Yeah. Okay. Any more questions for our planner? And thank you, by the way, for coming. We're good? Okay, so our CAO just asked that question. Do we want to defer this, get some information, and then come back? In the meantime, the shed's not going anywhere. And, yep, were you going to say something?
Well, I'm just not sure what happens next. I made the motion. Should I make another motion to defer? How do we do that?
Yeah.
Table the motion.
Okay, can I have a seconder? Okay, Councillor Bell. Any more discussion on that? So what's going to happen is we're going to just get more information, and then we can go out and take a peek, and, okay? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Aye, contrary? Motion carried. All right. Thanks for that, folks. Okay, so the next business arising, thank you. A little bit more confusing this time, but it's good to get it all out there. Okay, so 10B, rezoning 1 Cosman. The council approves second reading to the rezoning of 1 Cosman Lane from low-density residential to medium-density residential. Looking for that motion. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Councillor.
No, I'll make the motion.
Okay, thank you. Seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Discussion? Go right ahead.
Yeah, just given the housing shortage that we're experiencing in this area, this makes perfectly good sense.
Yeah. Agree. Okay, any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Okay, new business, September Committee of the Whole. So the recommended motion is that we change Committee of the Whole from the 22nd to the 29th. I can't be there, but that doesn't mean I need, yeah, what's the reason? Sorry, I just saw.
No, the AMA
Oh, that's
Annual Conference is the week of the 22nd,
Okay.
and I was planning to attend, but Your Worship, it's probably more important that you be here than me, so
We can go, that's Thursday, we can go the 21st, or we could go the 28th or something like that. Does it matter to anybody here?
Can I look?
What day? I have to look as well. Give me 10 seconds.
21st is okay. Oh, the 21st, you'd still be away though, wouldn't you?
I'll be away all that week. The conference begins on the Tuesday, so I'll be traveling on the Monday.
That's right.
Are you away all week on the week of the 26th, Your Worship?
26 is the volunteer awards.
Right, I'm
And
away on the
I'm
27th.
Gone, huh?
I'm away on the 27th, I just recall.
27th, 28th, I'm leaving, yeah. I'm gone the 28th, 29th.
Could we do it earlier?
Yeah.
I couldn't do the 15th, but I could do the 14th.
Are you gone that week, Jeff?
I hope not. No, I would be around on the 14th or the 15th, yeah. Or we could be done by then.
Should be. Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
He has a reputation.
Counselor Bell.
I just wanted to let you know that I'm unavailable, and I think I've let you know this.
Yeah.
I'm unavailable from the 15th to the 22nd.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you okay, Deputy, on the 14th? I don't want to, I know you should be able to. Where's that meeting? Okay. All right, you don't have to drive out. Okay. So let's do a motion for the 14th, okay?
Okay.
Okay? Moved by Counselor Cleveland, second by Counselor Lesser. Any more discussion on that? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried, that's a week.
yes. So staff reports will be late.
Yeah.
That's all right.
So we have sent out, I guess it would just be duly sent out to us on a calendar.
Yep, yep.
Okay, good. Thank you. Did I call for the vote? All right, we're good. Okay, so. Oh, yes. So the motion is now the 14th. We're still good with that. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Okay, Council Advisory Committees, Deputy Mayor.
Recommended motion that council write a letter of support for a number 2 construction battalion monument funding application.
Moved and seconded. Discussion?
I'd just like to say I know Chuck Smith has did a lot of work behind this, and I know the group that he's working with, and this will get done. So I'm happy to see this, and yeah, it's nice that this is getting out and we're here.
Yep.
So I'm happy with this one.
Agree. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Lesser.
Just on the same topic, I was impressed the fact that it's going to be, the location will be prominent, I guess. And I was thinking at one point, would it make sense to put it in like Greenville or a community that of African descent? But I think I think more people will see it and recognize it if it's in front of the library. So I was really happy to hear that part.
Agreed. Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried. Deputy?
Recommended motion that council approve first reading to amend the building code bylaw, section 2.20.
Okay. Seconded by Councillor Cleveland. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried.
Recommended motion that council amend the Nova Scotia building code bylaw enforcement policy, section 2.2.
Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Bell? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried.
Recommended motion that council accept staff recommendation to defer activation of the art exhibit in municipal spaces policy for 6 months.
Second by Councillor Bell. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, Citizen Advisory, Planning Advisory. You good there, Councillor? Thank you. Reports for information. Any questions for committee chairs? And just as a way of, go ahead, Councillor Bell.
Not a question, but just an acknowledgement. And congratulations to our Councillor Gilders, who assumed the chairmanship of the Yarmouth County Solid Waste Park Authority, I guess it is. And I'm sure you're going to do a wonderful job, and I just wanted to acknowledge and offer you all the support that we're able to give.
Thank you. Any more questions for committee chairs? Good, okay. Additions, okay, so 14A, I put the ferry issue on. I think, I haven't read it, I've just been flying through phone calls and everything, and haven't even read the full piece. But today basically what happened was the provincial government, Premier Houston said on Thursday to the media following the cabinet that he's disappointed in the ferry numbers, but he would wait to see where the numbers end up at the end of season. And Kim Maslin took things a bit further after Thursday cabinet meeting when she was asked about the service, and she said that canceling the ferry contract was absolutely an option. I need to, I've already spoken to some folks. This doesn't surprise me at all. The numbers are not bad. They're actually quite good. We just got over, years of COVID. We've still got that, I hate to say it, that horrific arrive can that's trapping people that just don't want to, use that piece either. So at the very least, to write that letter and ask the questions, where's this, not the study, but there's a word for it, where's the information gathering? Where are the comparisons? What are you thinking? Try to be diplomatic, but what are you thinking? So, those types of things, together with obviously and I say at least this entire end of the province, together with our, not just tourism operators, regular businesses, everything from gas stations to restaurants to, fixed roof accommodations, all of those pieces. Folks are just, on a daily basis, I get lots of messages from people. They're thrilled with the numbers. The downtown's packed. People are traveling throughout the region. We are just getting back on our feet, and you simply do not put a halt to something that decimates an entire end of the province, much less the rest of the province that gets ferry goers, So, I get a lot of calls from Cape Breton, there's so many people from the ferry that have made their way, PEI, those types of things. So everyone feels this. There's still tens of thousands of people coming across. I don't know what kind of numbers they're looking at, but I'll need to write that letter. I'll start there. Okay, so someone, go ahead, Councillor Dares.
Well, I think, number one, you made a good point in that this is not a regional issue for this end of the province, because having been involved in a tourism-related industry before, I can assure you that Cape Breton did feel the loss of the ferry, and they've also felt the return. So it's throughout the entire province. So I think it's just as important to tourism operators on the other end of the province as it is to us. But quite honestly, I found that the comments that were made today by the Premier and in particular by Ms. Masland were ill-informed and reckless. And I think that should be the message.
Yeah. Planned, though. Go ahead, Councillor Cleveland.
Ever since I've been a councillor, and actually a long time before that, I've been involved in tourism and working to build a tourism industry here, specifically for this region, but otherwise as well. And it's crucial that that this industry continues to grow, and we've worked very hard. And while what's happened today is not surprising at all, it is pretty discouraging. Now, when you're talking numbers, they were talking somewhere in the vicinity of about 41,000 is what they're looking at. When you consider a 3-year hiatus, COVID, I thought those were amazing numbers, and she called them terribly disappointing. And I guess my question is, what would have pleased them? And I honestly, between you, me, and everyone else who's listening, I don't think any number would have pleased them. I think that this has become a political football, and it has become a problem. And so I spent the last week in northern Nova Scotia, mainland Nova Scotia, New Glasgow, and through Pictou County, Stellarton, and I spoke to a few tourism people there. The waterfront in Pictou County was I was there on a Monday night, and it was packed with people who were listening to music being played on the waterfront, and people were eating, up and down the line. And I spoke with some of those people who did not hesitate to say that the presence of the ferry makes a difference. It makes a difference all through the province. It does. And do you require any kind of a motion? You probably don't, but I would make that motion that we write that letter and look for support, because this is something we're going to have to fight for.
So you're going to make the motion for the letter, and the motion can include that I am going to reach out to our neighbors all the way up both shores to get them to do the same thing, right? I mean, it's just, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, somebody had a light on. Thank you, Councillor. Go ahead, Councillor Lesser.
Should we vote on that? Do we vote on that motion first, or
What's that?
are we voting on that motion first, or should I talk about?
No, you can, as long as the motion's on the table, we can discuss this.
I guess I'd like to see the troops from the Save the Pool committee back initiated. We have people in the community we know like to fight. We're looking at a new Mariner Center. The Y, we just got up and going, and lots of good things going. But you're right, if we pull the ferry out of Yarmouth, it's going to be the same as pulling the cotton mill out. But we've been through that. We had the tin mine go. And I agree. I think this is something that I think it's something that was known for a while, and I agree that I don't think the numbers really matter. I think it would matter if it was in a different riding, perhaps, but I would agree with the word reckless. I don't think it's a good move to say, coming from somebody who, no, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to stop there. Yeah, I think it's terrible that they would even come out with that.
Okay, go ahead there, Deputy.
I was speaking to some teachers today who have did some traveling in the last little bit, and they're talking about hotel rooms in Halifax being $600 and $700. And
Yeah.
I think that boat brings a lot of people over who fill up hotels, and they can charge that money if they want. So, you know, if you think it's not working, the price alone, the hotels are packed, right? And it is some traveling, of course, within, but it's also some people coming over. I myself was surprised at the numbers. I thought it was quite good. I mean, we're recovering from COVID.
You're not
you know,
wrong.
Yeah, a lot of people are still, you know, weary to travel and scared and whatnot. And I do think those comments were somewhat reckless. If you're trying to improve a service, you don't talk down about it. And if you're trying to get an adequate evaluation of where you're at, you certainly don't do it 3/4 of the way through a season and your first season when you're recovering. So I think all along this end of the province and even Halifax, I think if you reached out, I think a lot of people would say that, you know, our boat does make a difference. And I know our town's booming because of it. I think if it wasn't, there'd be a lot of people in our area, especially the tourism, you know, situation wouldn't be as good as it is. So the proof's in the pudding. Do some numbers, look around. I mean, as Councillor Wade said, what numbers would have pleased?
Yeah, there isn't a number, I don't think. Okay, so any more discussion on this one? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. 14B, I think everybody knows this is a really sad and historic day with the passing of Her Majesty the Queen. I would simply, I mean, I would do this anyway, but I just want you to be aware, and we can do a motion, but just to send a letter off to the family there, proper protocol, just to send our condolences. So, yeah, that's 70 years. 70 years as Queen. It's a long time. So are we okay with me doing that? You want to make a motion, Councillor Bell? Yeah.
I would make a motion that Yarmouth Town Council, through its mayor, send formal condolences on the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
Thank you. All right. Seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. And Pink Day. Go ahead there, Deputy.
So today in our schools, students and staff were encouraged to wear pink, as some of us are at the table and many of us did today at school. What used to be Anti-Bullying Day just kind of has turned into even more. It's about mental health support. It's about no bullying, about being kind. And although we do this on these days to kind of represent things, I think those are things that we should carry with us throughout the year. Talking about a government that might not support a ferry and whatnot, given recent events in our community when it comes to mental health supports, we'd definitely like to see some money come down the tube to support our youth and many other things. So just wanted to give a shout out to that day. It was very well received at our school, and I think even outside of this day, it's very important to bring the message forward.
I love the pink because it's not just words. Like every time they look at the pink shirts, you have to think about, you know, you have to think about that. Even Wade's pink shirt. Go ahead. I know it's a sad week.
It's a sad week, and it's a powerful message anytime, but it seemed especially poignant today with word of another loss, a loss of another young person. And it's something we certainly have to keep in the forefront and offer support in any way, shape, or form. But fundamentally, all of us, not just as counselors or as leaders, you lead by example a lot. And, you know, there's always calls for more money, and we certainly need supports in many ways. But no, but is not the right word.
And.
In addition to that, we all need to learn to be kinder to each other and to have that patience and to be ready to mentor whenever those opportunities come. It's a day that I certainly have done a lot of reflecting. I mean, I have daughters, I have granddaughters, and sometimes you worry. And when you see what happens, it's something that frightens. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just, I'm just going to add one more thing to that. And I think we all know this. We can't ever think by looking at somebody that we know their story. And I think we learn that every single day, that we think we know the people that are going through things. That's simply not the case. Everybody has their own load to carry. So I'm glad Pink Day happens, and wish every day was Pink Day. Okay. Thanks, folks. Approval of invoices. Councillor Lesser, seconded by Councillor Dares. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Date of next meeting is October the 13th. See that too. It's a busy fall. Town council's right in there, okay? And do we have anything in camera? Yes, okay. So a motion to go in camera, please. Thank you, Councillor Bell, second by Councillor Hatfield. Heather? I don't know whether to call you guys by your first name. It's hard to separate. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Have you got a couple items, or?